All right, so I'm here with Megan Carroll today, and we're so glad that you joined us. And we're discussing the 5 secrets to vibrational healing, how to shift your vibration into healing. And this came about from a conversation that Megan and I had, a month ago, something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, where we were, sitting down and discussing clients and just had some interesting things come up around alternative healing and how it's different from regular, allopathic healing, and what the advantages and disadvantages are, and what the secrets are, because they're not as well known as, when you go to a doctor, there's a certain protocol. So I want to give Megan a chance to introduce herself before we dive in. I'm Anna Holden with AnnaHolden.com, and I basically work as an energy medicine healer, an intuitive healer, and an Ayurvedic counselor. So I combine energy medicine and Ayurvedic healing and yoga to create kind of my own type of alternative medicine. And I met Megan through another friend, and she does similar things, but work kind of comes at it from a different angle. So
Yeah, I'm Megan. I'm a yoga therapist, so I combine yoga and Ayurveda and also energy medicine to create, again, another alternative healing method that's sort of like my own thing. But I guess my angle is a little bit more using yoga postures and breathing, and Ayurveda as the container for shifting energy.
Awesome. Yeah. So let's see. This is bugging me. There we go.
Okay.
All right. So I noticed when I said this, I said this to Megan, I said, sometimes clients come to me, which I think clients are asking the wrong questions. So for example, I had a client who came to me one day, and it was over an email, and she said, what can I do? What can you do for my back? Like, what can your brand of healing do for my back pain? Which is really quite an open-ended question. It's like, well, I need to understand the whole context behind your back pain. Mm-hmm. And so that requires me, to go through a lot of questioning and a lot of process, because rather than looking at your back pain as a symptom that needs to be fixed, my method is to look at your back pain as a symptom for a context in your life that has gone out of balance.
Right.
And so sometimes I feel like, just because of the way that our culture is set up and how we are taught to go to healers, clients are kind of putting themselves at a disadvantage, not kind of knowing like what to ask or what the process will even look like. Do you have a similar experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it can be challenging as a practitioner of alternative healing processes when people come to you and they say, I'll have people come to me after I teach a yoga class and be like, so I have this pain like in my hip. So what can I do? What's like a pose I could do for my hip? And I'm like, oh wow, okay, that's a really big question. Like, right. What can you do for your hip is like, well, we have to talk about what's actually going on with your hip. And it's not right. The same as, going to see like a Western doctor and saying, oh, I have this, and they just, give you a pill.
Right.
We're looking at it from a really different angle. So a lot of times people come in with these questions that are just like not quite the right question,
right.
for what it is that alternative practitioners have to offer.
Right. Exactly. And it's not like it's their fault. Like I said, it's kind of the context of our greater healthcare system, I think, that's just, kind of led us to ask these types of questions. We feel like we have a specific thing going on with our body, and there should be a specific answer for that thing. Unfortunately, it just generally, isn't that way.
It's just so much more complicated than that.
Exactly.
And I think that's the thing that sometimes gets kind of brushed over, like something that people aren't as aware of. So
absolutely.
That's one of the things we wanted to talk about today.
Yeah.
It's just how we can guide people toward asking the right questions and understanding the healing process
right.
better.
Yeah, and I think one of the ways we can describe that is oftentimes allopathic medicine will treat more symptomatically than it will the root cause. And one of the things I loved about learning Ayurveda was learning how, when in Western medicine a disease is given a name, there's already 5 processes under that Ayurveda has recognized have gone out of balance in the body. So they're, you know, where Western medicine is taking something that's really manifested grossly. You know, there are physical symptoms in the body. Ayurveda has said, wait, like you've missed the 5 more subtle components before that.
Right.
Yeah, which kind of brings up gross to subtle. This is something that we've talked about. Do you want to explain that concept?
Yeah. Well, the idea is that, you know, there's the physical world that we live in where, you know, you can touch and see and feel everything, but then we also have a more subtle environment that we live in that we can't see or feel or touch. So that consists of, you know, your mind and your emotions, but even more subtle than that, you can think of your energy, right? And everybody, I think, kind of has a basic sense of what energy is. You know, like if you walk into a room, you can kind of sense the energy of the room, or you might say, oh, I like the energy of that person, or I don't like the energy of that person. So that's like the subtle realm of our existence. And the idea is that by the time some kind of disease has manifested in the physical realm, it's already like really, really dense. And there's a subtle realm in which things are manifesting all the time that we're not as maybe attuned to, especially in our kind of Western culture.
Right. Right. And Ayurveda and yoga rules, really, and energy medicine too, all of them, which are all kind of the same thing, really, kind of dictate that anything that is manifested grossly has had a more subtle component.
Right.
You know, and I kind of like looking like Ayurveda does to nature to get an example. It's like before there is rain, there are clouds that are ready to burst. And before that, there was the evaporation. And before that, there's always some more subtle force happening behind what we perceive as an event.
Right.
Right. And so, and we can see that in our bodies. You know, people say, like, you know, be cautious about what you think because it might be your words. Be cautious about what you say because it might become your actions. And those are the general rules that we kind of look at. And so, you know, abiding by those principles, alternative medicine really looks to find the root and treat the root cause of something rather than the symptom. And this makes the healing process different.
Very different. Yeah.
Do you want to explain how it's different?
Yeah. Well, when we're saying root, we're talking about like the subtle, like the subtle vibration that is creating whatever's happening in the physical realm. So I love your example of the weather, because that's just a really nice way to talk about it. So when we're talking about the root, we're talking about the subtle causes of the physical manifestation, the underlying vibration. So that's basically when we're trying to heal and we're trying to create wholeness, we're really looking at what's the vibration, like what's the underlying vibration of the physical manifestation. And instead of trying to shift the physical manifestation and just work in the physical world, we're actually going to go into the energetic realm and shift the underlying vibration. And then as a result, the physical realm will shift.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so it seems, you know, in some ways it seems less straightforward, right? Because we're not focusing on the outer layers first. We want to go into those inner layers and create shifts. And so what this does is creates a healing process that is not linear like we come to expect. You know, we go to a doctor and we get a prescription for a symptom that we have, and we expect to get better on kind of a linear scale.
Right.
You know, maybe there's a certain timeline they associate with it or whatever, and you know, but we get better on a linear scale. And alternative medicine doesn't always work that way.
I'd say mostly it doesn't.
Yeah, I would say mostly it doesn't too. But painting a cheery picture. But no, it doesn't work that way, and that is, I would say, the gift of alternative medicine is that it allows you to go into process with your healing rather than to have healing authoritatively over you. rather. So you're not giving up authority to something else in your body. You're an active participant in a process which is changing and shifting as you are changing and shifting your subtle environment.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it's more holistic, right? And if you're just getting that, that whatever, the pill from the doctor, or even it can be like an herb or something like that. But if you're just getting something to treat the physical symptom and you're not looking at the energetic vibration, a lot of times you're just kind of putting a Band-Aid over the issue, like the deeper issue of the energetic vibration that's kind of off.
Right.
So when we shift that energetic vibration, we actually heal holistically.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, it's a process. It's a non-linear process.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times my clients, they start to go into that process that's non-linear, and then they get kind of freaked out.
Right.
Because they actually maybe start feeling worse, or a new symptom shows up, or they start feeling, emotions that they haven't felt in a long time, or something like that. And then, if you compare that to the Western model, you might say, oh, well, this isn't working, because I'm just supposed to keep getting better and better and better and better. And it's not like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's too bad that healing has kind of been advertised that way. It's like, oh, healing, it must feel good. But healing actually can be painful sometimes.
Yeah.
The process is kind of up and down, and then circular, and then, maybe spiral for a little while. And, and I had a client who, said to me, like, I think I'm back at square one, and, kind of explained the symptoms, and I was like, this is not square one. This might be a dip in the healing trend, but that doesn't mean that things are actually getting worse overall. It just means that things have shifted and we're working with something new, where, sometimes it's described as peeling off the layers of an onion. It's like you don't quite know what the next layer is going to look like.
What's in there?
Yeah.
And it's really different for everybody, and that's an important thing too. Like, so when a person comes to me and says, well, I have this back pain, so how long is it going to take for me to get better? Gosh, I don't know. One person with back pain, it could take a longer time and be kind of a more painful or uncomfortable process. And then another person with back pain, same back pain, but totally different process. Could be anything. So we don't really know what we're going to uncover until we uncover it.
Yeah.
Because we're such multi-dimensional beings. We're so, there's so much to us.
Right.
And so when we're peeling off these layers, it can be very complex and take any amount of time, really.
Right.
And be anything. Like, I know some people, when they're in a healing process, I think we've both gone through, personally, some really gnarly healing processes.
Right.
They're super uncomfortable.
Right.
And then sometimes not as much, too.
Right.
It really depends.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And I think that this is where I go back to the example I gave earlier about, a client who asked me about her back. I get a lot of questions about that. And it was like, well, in order to work with you, I need to understand the context that created this disease. I need to understand all of the components in the past while, maybe the past few years, that have created a context for your body to become diseased or discomfort. And that's not, it's not to say that there's fault. Sometimes healers will say, well, you created this, or, whatever. And I don't like to say it that way. In a way, yes, that's true, because we create our reality. However, it's not in a way to place blame or to lay fault.
Right.
It's more like a context created a certain energetic wiring within our space, comprised of belief systems and the people who are supporting us, or who are supposed to be supporting us, or not supporting us, where we put our faith. All of those things create a subtle vibration that shifts the physical realm. Right? And so giving ourselves credit, or, for manifesting our reality, is really just an opportunity to go into process, into healing, and start to have a little bit more authority over what your subtle components are.
Right.
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 Yeah. That's the process.
And that is the process.
That's
absolutely.
The process.
And and I find it interesting because a lot of times alternative therapies, and I get a lot of clients like this who come to me as like a last resort.
Yeah.
As like, things are not working, and then it's like they've kind of hit the oh crap factor, and then
they've tried everything.
Yeah. So why not go to an intuitive healer?
Because what the hell?
I got nothing to lose,
right.
and that's fine, and I'm like more than happy to do what I can to help you in your healing. But if we're talking about working on a subtle level, it's much easier to shift and more comfortable to shift subtle components when they haven't been building up over a really long period of time.
Right. Because by the time something, I said this earlier, by the time something's manifested in the physical realm, it's very dense, right? It's gotten so dense that it's actually in the physical world. And so it's a lot harder to shift.
Yeah.
And so actually these therapies that we offer, that you and I offer and so many other people offer, work so much better if you use them as a first resort instead of a last resort. Because we're talking about the subtle realm, and the subtle realm shifts. Like, that's one of the qualities of energy, is that it has the ability to shift really easily and quickly and respond like instantly. Really, which is amazing. It's so cool, and something that we can capitalize on.
Absolutely.
As healers and as people, but we have to kind of understand that concept.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. And I find it really interesting, working with, working with clients where they haven't paid attention to the subtle. They've only paid attention to the gross process. And so paying attention to the subtle is kind of painful because there's things that, may be buried or whatever. And so sometimes it's really nice to have a guide through that process, which is different than asking for somebody to have authority over your healing. It's asking somebody to guide you.
Right.
Right. And and here's something too to note about the difference between Western allopathic and alternative medicine is that now we go to doctors when we're kind of in crisis, right? We go to doctors, and and often kind of depending on your insurance and your bank account, you might hold out to go to a doctor until it's like the worst possible thing.
Right.
But back in like the olden days, Ayurvedic practitioners were part of the community, and you didn't pay them. They knew you from birth.
Oh, yeah.
And their job was to keep you healthy and to guide you on a path of health. And if something went wrong, then they were at fault for actually not preventing and preparing you.
Right.
So it was a much different, like, it's like the health was thought of differently. It's like, let's prevent
disease.
Right.
Right. Health being like actually proactively staying healthy.
Exactly.
Preventing disease instead of just kind of putting out fires.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a whole different way of viewing health. Really.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, alternative medicine and the different modalities that we're talking about, you can start anywhere.
Right.
You can start shifting anywhere. And that's really kind of the secrets that we want to talk to you about today, is like, you can start shifting now, and then if you decide you need a guide in the process, one of us is here, or, find somebody that you resonate with, of course. Yeah, so we're trying to really shift the whole context for healing.
Right.
So, and sometimes this is kind of hard to talk about too, and it kind of goes back to what I was saying about we kind of create our own, sometimes we create our own disease in order to create healing, and again, not in some sort of fault way, but
consciously.
Not consciously. It's that our context kind of creates something, and we often call this a healing crisis.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I wanted to share a little bit about my healing crisis so that people can understand, what one could look like. So I guess it was back in like 2009. I had to kind of low back issues all my life, and when things had gotten really bad, I'd gone to the doctor and said, what can I do? And they give me some pills and they tell me to do like bridge pose, you know, and it was like, here's something you can do for your back. Yeah. Right. And I would do that. And then in 2009, it would not get better. And I saw a physical therapist for several weeks. I left physical therapy, re-injured it right away. I didn't trust anybody to help me at that point. I'd had so many outside help, and none of it was working, and came to find that I had pretty severe hypermobility in my pelvis and sacrum. So, when women are pregnant, they get a hormone called relaxin that allows their pelvis to kind of shift, and make room for a baby. I was like worse than that, like I remember one day my physical therapist saying, like, don't get in a car accident right now. Like, don't do that. I mean, my pelvis would shift in my sleep, like walking down the street. It was painful, it was debilitating, and I was really a go-getter and a triathlete, and I was very like sporty, and all of a sudden I was kind of sidelined, and I had to start looking at a lot of things that I hadn't had to look at in the past, which was, in what parts of me do I have my worth wrapped up in? In which ways in my life am I supported? In which ways am I not supported? Right. And the whole pelvis is in kind of an area of the second chakra, which is, it forms our attachments to people. It kind of represents our stability in life. It can do with finances. It also has to do with partnerships and emotions and kind of who we are at our core, and if we're able to love that, really. And I went on a 3-year, I'm still kind of coming out of it, but I'd say the bulk of it was 3 years, where basically everything that I love to do physically was taken away from me. And I had to learn to be okay in my own skin and understand what real support meant to me. And that turned my life upside down. I ended up getting a divorce and learning to find stability on my own and surround myself with people who really loved and supported me and didn't love and support a certain part of me. In the meantime, I changed my lifestyle to an Ayurvedically supportive lifestyle. I had intuitive guidance and was developing my own through meditation practice. And I came out feeling I'm much more me now. There's not parts of me that kind of hide in the background like I used to do.
And your back's better.
And my back's better.
But that's like one piece of that whole healing journey that you went on.
Exactly. For so many years, it was like my back. And now it's like, I kind of have to, keep up some maintenance or whatever. But my back is like in the background now, where it should be, and now I get to live. And I'm sure you've had your own kind of healing crisis.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people can resonate with that story that you just told. Like, a lot of people have gone through things like that. And that's what we call a healing crisis in our arena. Right. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. And I think it's just important to point out that, again, like, her back got better, but also, like, Anna became more of who she is. Like, all of you healed. And your back going out was just the kind of Kickstarter for that whole process that you went on.
It was, and really, when I think back on it now, I kind of see it was the last straw. Like, there were other things that could have alerted me to these problems, but I needed to be taken out in injury. Like, I see that now. I was stubborn, and
you needed something really loud.
I needed something really loud, unfortunately.
And a lot of times we do. Right?
A lot of times we do.
That's why we're here.
Right. To help you through the loudness, or whatever it is.
That thing that kind of kickstarts this deeper process. But again, I think this is just coming around full circle to what we were saying at the beginning, which is that when someone comes to us and they're like, oh, I hurt my back, what do I do? And it's like, we have 5 minutes, they just want to chat real quick. We can't really talk to you about it in 5 minutes, because it's like, there's so much there on a subtle level. You know, it's not just your back, it's your whole being is affected by that in some way, including your energy. And then what's the energy that caused that?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So when we're talking about healing, it's really shifting the energy.
Exactly. Should we go into the secrets now?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, based on that, secret number one to shifting your vibration into healing is simply an awareness and a willingness to heal.
Right. If you don't know that whatever's going on is going on, then obviously you can't heal it consciously. And then you have to be willing, right? If you're like, yeah, I don't want to deal with that, then you don't want to deal with it.
Then it's not time.
Yeah, it's not time.
You know, it's not time. If you don't want to spend more than 5 minutes getting an answer from somebody, then it might not be time for that deeper level of healing. And that's okay.
Yeah.
If it's not time, fine. Wait till it's time for you.
Yeah, because if you don't want to do it, it's not going to work.
Exactly. I mean, one of the rules that I teach about healing is that you have to have personal power to heal. You have to be on your own team. So if it's not the right time, it's probably not going to work.
Yeah.
That's okay. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, so having an awareness and a willingness. All right, do you want to talk about number two?
Sure. So you have the awareness and the willingness. That's the first step. And then the second step is, we're calling it just mindfulness. I'm sure you've heard that word before. Everybody's heard that word.
Yeah.
Which is great. So we're defining mindfulness as a non-judgmental awareness of the present moment. And that really, like, the awareness and the willingness, I feel like, is like setting the stage. And then the mindfulness is like bringing the actor out onto the stage. Like, this is where things start to happen when you start to practice mindfulness. And the non-judgmental part can be tricky.
Absolutely. So notice the difference when, like, my back is hurt and I'm like, and I think I'm being mindful and my back is hurt and it's like, my back is hurt and I can't do anything that I like and it means that I'm going to be hurt for the rest of my life. That is not non-judgmental. Right.
And so one thing that I like to do when I'm working with mindfulness is, and there's judgment that comes up, judgment about, myself or other people or the future or the past, is just to be aware of the judgment too, to be mindful of the judgment too. So there's always going to be that part of you that's like judging and just talking and whatever.
We're human.
Yeah.
That's what we do.
Right. But then you can find another part of you that can just kind of observe.
Right.
Can just kind of watch the experience without really having an opinion.
Right.
And that's the part of you that we want to start to cultivate.
Absolutely.
To begin the healing process.
So that when you notice your back pain and then you notice the reaction that you have, you just watch your reaction, and rather than letting that story define your experience, you allow it to just be a story that your mind is telling you, and you kind of go, okay, that's what my mind is telling me about that. Okay.
Right. And just see it.
Yeah, just gather information, as if you were like a bird watcher. And you're just out kind of watching the way that the different birds interact and the way that they sing. You're not judging them for the way that they're doing it. You're just gathering information.
Right.
Yeah. And this is probably the most important part.
Yeah, I would say so. If you skip this step,
the rest won't work.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to have the mindfulness.
Yeah, they're kind of sequential. And so number three, then, the third secret to shifting your vibration is, once you've cultivated mindfulness around a pattern that you have, number three is to attempt to step out of that pattern.
But notice we use the word attempt.
Right. And to practice. I'd also say to practice stepping out of the pattern. Because, Ayurveda talks about certain patterns that are ingrained in us from birth. And they call these things samskaras, and they talk about them as the grooves in a record. And the grooves in a record, those can be hard to step out of. They might be tied up in belief systems or family, patterning or whatever they are. Like, your reactions can be very ingrained.
Very ancient.
Right.
Yeah.
So, say that you notice that, you're in pain, and every night you are drinking alcohol, let's say, to numb some of the pain. And you become mindful that actually that you're drinking the alcohol because you're feeling lonely and unsupported. So there may be like a little bit of like an underline, like, oh, I don't know what to do with loneliness. I don't know what to do with that emotion. And so you may like attempt to get out of that pattern, and you may get sucked back down. And so what's number 4?
Number 4 is to go back to number 2.
Yeah.
So basically step number 4 is to repeat steps 2 and 3.
Right.
So as we attempt to step out of these patterns, we start to kind of uncover more details about how the pattern works. Exactly. Right? Like maybe at first our example person, like maybe they thought they were just drinking because they like to drink. Right? And then the first time they try to stop, they realize, or they see with mindfulness that there's an underlying loneliness. And so that reveals another layer of the pattern.
Right.
And then as they attempt to work with the loneliness and to stop the drinking, another layer might become revealed. Maybe something about that person's childhood comes up.
Right.
And so the idea is to continue to attempt to change the pattern, but to always go back to mindfulness around what's happening. Because otherwise, you end up just encountering a lot of pain and getting sucked into the pain. So the mindfulness is actually what keeps you at almost, I want to say, like a safe distance from the things that you're uncovering. So you're still experiencing them fully, but they're not, like, you're not getting sucked into them and sucked into the drama. You're actually able to see it from like a clearer vantage point.
Yeah. I think it's important for here to note that like we often in our culture, we really prize thoughts and critical thinking. However, the mind the mind and the thoughts are kind of a lower portion of the mind as defined in yoga and Ayurveda. And really their job is to circulate past experience. Right, so all they're doing...
You mean the lower mind?
The lower mind.
Yeah.
All the thoughts are doing is circulating kind of past experience and anything we've picked up. The mind is not... The lower part of the mind, its job is not to bring in new information and inspiration. That's another, faculty of the mind. So often...
It's more like the higher mind, though, and not the thoughts.
Exactly, not the thoughts. So I think what Megan was describing, another way to put it, is that you're not getting caught up in the story that the thoughts are telling you.
Right.
The thoughts are just going to create a story. That's just what they do.
Right.
But there are more layers to the mind, one being kind of what we've talked about, the witness or the observer. And mindfulness helps you kind of be like, wait a minute, that's just my patterning speaking. Like, that's just the story that my thoughts have created for me.
Right, that's the loop.
That's the loop that's
so you don't
playing.
have to identify with that loop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can choose to write a new story for yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, we go back and forth between steps 2 and steps 3. And that really is the process.
Right. And at any point in this process, you can say like, whoa, I need a little bit of help here. I don't know how to work through loneliness. Like, I need a guide. I need somebody to help me deal with emotions or, whatever it is. And so that's when you might mindfully say like, oh, I think I'm out of my depth. And gain some tools from, get some help to help you in your process.
Right, and that's where we come in.
Yeah, absolutely. And so then the 5th secret to healing, and this is really the secret to making it all work, is to approach your healing process with what I call a kindergarten vibration. And this basically means that you are in practice with yourself. And, when you're in kindergarten, you get to color outside of the lines, you get to try a lot of things. Learning, mistakes are called learning experiences. You can spill things and not get in trouble, It's really kind of the sense of amusement that keeps things flowing.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think I remember in our conversation we had about this a while ago that we talked about seriousness and how, and this is something I've been working on for a long time because I'm very serious.
Yeah.
But seriousness can actually keep energy like really stuck, and it makes it hard for things to shift.
Yeah. So
it's important to have kind of, as much as you can, like a lighthearted, kind of playful kindergarten energy, and remember that like this is not a linear process, and you're going to make all kinds, they're not mistakes. I was going to say mistakes, but things are not going to go like exactly the way you think they should go.
Right. And it's like, I kind of like to think back to grade school, because I remember in the grade school, at the beginning of class, we'd have these activities where we would get to like color or, you know, do something fun like a crossword. And then you would have tests. And it was like you had your number 2 pencil and you like had, you know, you're like 9 years old and everything gets really serious.
Right.
And this energy is just making like your body do this, right? And so that's the kind of the difference that we're talking about, is like when we approach things with seriousness, we sometimes thwart our subtle body's ability to move things.
Right.
But when we approach it from this place of kind of like kindergarten or amusement or playfulness, we just get to move things because we want to move them.
Right, and the energy moves much more easily.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can even totally feel this, like, in your daily life, right? When you're like out with friends and everybody's like laughing and having a really good time, like you can feel the energy's like flowing freely, versus some kind of very serious thing where everything just feels kind of dense and stuck. Right. Yeah.
And so when you can't find amusement, when you can't find kindergarten vibration in your process, this is when it's good to go back to number 2 again and find that non-judgmental mindfulness, because chances are you've gotten caught up in one of your thought patterns, one of your stories, and you're starting to believe something about the story that you may or may not have to believe.
Right.
Right. So that's kind of a good place to look.
Yeah. So I guess we're always coming back to mindfulness.
Yes. Always coming back to mindfulness.
That's not surprising.
Yeah. You know, but kind of followed through, these 5 steps will get you through a healing crisis. And of course, they will lead to some other steps. But like overall, like this is a context, this is creating a context that will bring forth healing.
Right. And I think it's kind of cool to think about that idea of context, because really, as for me and you as healers, or just for people that are in a healing process, like all we do is we create the context, and then the healing happens kind of like magically, or kind of happens on its own. And that's because the body has this very deep intelligence that and the body wants to heal. And I don't just mean like your physical body, but like your whole being, like all of the layers of your being want to be in wholeness and harmony and homeostasis. And so really, if we create the context for that, it happens kind of on its own. Right. Which is, I think, like the concept of grace.
Absolutely. You know? Oh, that's a beautiful way to put it. Yeah, you know, and it's like, I title myself as an intuitive healer, but I'm not really a healer. I'm a facilitator. You know, I facilitate healing in you. I'm not doing really anything besides pointing out the shifts that can happen.
Right, and you're holding the space.
Exactly.
For the healing to happen.
Yeah, and so that's how we work.
Healing facilitators.
Healing facilitators. I like that. Well, and I'm sure that we would love to work with you if you're in the middle of a healing crisis and, you know, need a little bit of lighthearted guidance, even for something that feels really heavy for you. You know, let us kind of hold space for that and help you find a little bit of lightness, get yourself out of that stuck story, and help you start to shift towards healing.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else to add before we close out?
I think we should just close it up. Let's offer our information to people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Go ahead.
So yeah, you can contact me. My website is Yoga in Seattle, and Yoga in Seattle is just all one word, yogainseattle.com. You can contact me that way, and I'd like to offer anybody who mentions this video 50% off of a yoga therapy session.
Awesome.
So all you have to do to take advantage of that is just, when you schedule your session with me, just say, hey, I saw your healing hangout video with Anna, and I'll give you 50% off.
Awesome. And so is that just for today, or is that for anybody who watches in the future?
Anybody who watches in the future, yeah.
Awesome.
Just one per person.
Gotta draw the line somewhere.
Gotta draw the line somewhere. But yeah, anybody that watches this video.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. That's great. And so I'd like to offer anybody who contacts me in the next 24 hours a super low rate, $25 for a full 1 hour session. Contact me in the next 24 hours and you can get that. So
do you want to give your info?
Yes. you can find me, well, right here on my website, annaholden.com. Yeah, there's a contact form, and you can give me a shout out. So, yeah. Well, we were really glad to get to talk to you today. So I hope you got the information that you need. And if you have any questions, you can contact me at annaholden.com or Megan at yogainseattle.com.
Thanks.
All right. Bye.